Well, guys, as I had promised, I would be doing this brief tour of Windows Millennium Edition, because today, September 14th, is Windows Millennium's birthday. On this date, in the year 2000, 15 years ago from today's date, the, quote, worst version of Windows was ever released. Windows, or PC Magazine named Windows Millennium Windows Mistake Edition, or Mistake Edition. But the reason being was because Windows Millennium was often criticized for being, quote-unquote, buggy and unstable. However, I never really had a problem with it. I had a Hewlett-Packard Pavilion computer back in the day. I cannot remember the model number, but it was an HP Pavilion that my father bought for me for my birthday in October of 2000, and it had Windows Millennium Edition on it. And I did not have many problems with it, except for the HP crapware that shipped with it. Anyway, so today we're going to be doing a brief tour in honor of Windows Millennium's 15th birthday. Now, one disclaimer. I do apologize for the video quality on this, but I think it's worth the poor quality. The reason being is because, believe it or not, I'm actually doing this tutorial on actual Windows Millennium hardware, that revived Dell Dimension XPS T450. That computer is being used to record this video. I found an old screen recorder called Quick Screen Recorder, which you'll see over here. It was made in 2005, about 10 years ago, and it was one of the only screen recorders I found that still supports Windows Millennium. So, if you want to record an old Windows 9X or Millennium machine, it actually runs on Windows 98 too, try Quick Screen Recorder. Anyways, on with the tour. Windows Millennium, as you'll see by this Wikipedia page, was released on today, September 14th, 2000, except it was a Thursday, not a Monday back then. It is version 4.90, and it was the last Windows 9X operating system. Now, I'm only going to use the Wikipedia articles for reference on stuff I don't remember, so bear with me here. Anyways, Windows Millennium came with a lot of new features. Basically, in the year 2000, Microsoft released Windows 2000 Professional, but it was more of a business operating system, and since Microsoft wanted an operating system to replace Windows 98 Second Edition, they were working on a new operating system, basically Windows 2000 Home Edition. That's what I consider Windows Millennium. It's a home edition of Windows 2000, except Windows 9X based instead of NT based. And the result was Windows Millennium Edition. Microsoft, what they basically did was they revamped Windows 98 SE and called it Millennium instead. So, in other words, Windows Millennium was basically Windows 98 3rd Edition, just Windows 98 SE on steroids in the long run. But, we're going to go ahead and go through some features of it, because it did have some interesting features, some of which still exist in Windows today. And Windows Millennium, believe it or not, is one of my favorite operating systems. For vintage computers, not as a main OS, because it hasn't been supported for 10 years. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the tour. So a few things I wanted to talk about with Windows Millennium. The first, because it was a music and media operating system, one of the key features it allowed you to do was grab images from your scanner or camera via a program called Windows Image Acquisition, WIA. And this feature still exists in modern versions of Windows today. Windows Image Acquisition basically allowed you to plug in a scanner or camera via USB, serial, or parallel, and you could instantly get the data off of them. Unfortunately, if you have Windows Millennium with no updates like I do, it would often result in a BSOD. And because Windows Millennium had a lot of driver issues, because people back in the day had problems getting it to install due to its driver problems. So that's why Windows Image Acquisition would cause blue screens quite often. Now, I never had that problem, but I know my dad, who had Windows Millennium, had that problem on his computer when we were trying to import our vacation photos from when I went to San Francisco in August of 2000, and Windows Image Acquisition screwed him over. Fortunately, we were able to recover the data, but it almost corrupted the image files. I don't know if Microsoft fixed that in an update. I really hope they did, but that's Windows Image Acquisition. One of the removed features in Windows Millennium, I forgot to mention this, and this is another reason why a lot of people didn't like Millennium, was because real mode DOS was stripped out. Windows Millennium, it was the last operating system to have DOS as a foundation. But real mode DOS was stripped out in Millennium. Now, not DOS was not completely removed like it was in XP, but in Millennium, a huge portion of it called real mode DOS was cut out to reduce boot times. That actually was helpful. Windows Millennium is actually one of the fastest booting operating systems of its time. It boots in a snap on this machine. However, because real mode DOS was stripped out, a lot of legacy applications that required it would not run correctly on Millennium, or wouldn't run at all, and that was another reason Millennium was criticized. As for other features in Millennium, we can take a look at some of the new features. We have a new Internet Explorer version, which was Explorer 5.5, versus what shipped with Windows 2000, which was IE5, and 98 SE also shipped with IE5, but first edition shipped with version 4. This is version 5.50. I haven't upgraded to 6, which you can do to make your Internet Explorer experience even better and get more viruses on Windows Millennium, which for an operating system like this would be great, right? Yeah, I didn't think so. But anyways, this is Microsoft Internet Explorer version 5.5, shipped with Windows Millennium. It basically had better JavaScript support and better Flash support for the time. Now, obviously, now you're not going to see that. But if you go to an old site like this, like Internet Explorer is Evil, you'll still be able to open vintage pages. In fact, I have a favorites bar full of old 90s websites that still work in these old versions of Internet Explorer. So Internet Explorer 5.5 was basically just content improvements to Flash content and Java content on the web. So that was Internet Explorer 5.5. Now, of course, it all sucks, but back in the day, for Internet Explorer, I have to say, wasn't too bad, but still I used Netscape. Another major thing you might notice is Millennium Edition. Windows Media Player is actually a full-blown program in Windows Millennium, whereas before it was just a player. It's actually the full-blown program that we know today. Unfortunately, Microsoft hasn't released a new version since Windows 7, so it's still in Windows 8 and 10. However, it's version 12, which was released in 2009 when 7 came out. So, and this is version 7.0, the first version to be a full-fledged program. But Windows Media Player 7 was quite a drastic improvement over its predecessors because first of all, it introduced the media guide, which unfortunately the website no longer exists today, but it introduced the media guide, and as you can see, oh, well, never mind. I guess I was wrong. The media guide does still exist today. It's funny because yesterday it wasn't working, but hey, it looks like it's working now. But anyways, here's the Windows Media Guide, which was first introduced in Windows Media Player 7. Obviously, in the year 2000, it looked a lot different, and since many people use dial-up internet, you wouldn't often see the media guide because you wouldn't be connected to the internet. But it basically, like Windows 98 did, brought the power of the web to your computer. As for CD audio, you could rip and burn CDs using the CD audio feature. I never tried it in Windows Media Player 7, so if any of you vigilant viewers have ever tried it, please leave me a comment. I'd love to know how it worked, because being Windows Millennium Edition, well, I guess I don't really know what to expect. There's also the media library. As you can see, since this is the first time, it's going to ask me if I want to search for media, so I'll go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and see what it finds. So far, nothing. But anyways, while it's looking for files, basically this just allows you, this exists in Windows Media Player today as well. It basically searches your computer for audio files, media files, MIDI files, MP3 files, and other files that Windows Media Player 7 was capable of playing. As for MP3s, though, modern MP3 files might not play with Windows Media Player 7. I've had a problem trying to get some of my music to play because Windows Media Player claims that the file is corrupted, quote-unquote, when really it's not. It's probably just because of this old version of Media Player. That's what I would assume. Anyways, so this is where you could create playlists like you couldn't do before. You could add songs to a playlist. You could search your playlist. You could get info on your file. You could add stuff to your library. It was really cool, and all your playlists would appear in this little area right here. There was also the radio tuner. Now, Windows Media Player 6.1, which shipped with Windows 2K, had a radio tuner called Radio Tower Internet. but it was a web-based program. It just launched Internet Explorer is really all it did. This was actually part of the program. I don't know if it works anymore. Let's see if it does. Let me see if the radio tuner still works. I don't believe it does because it's been 15 years since this program was released, and apparently it doesn't work. That's a shame. Anyways, the next new feature in Windows Media Player 7 was portable devices. Now, the iPod didn't come out until a year after Windows Millennium came out. So there was no iTunes at the time. So technically, I think that Microsoft began iTunes. Was the founder of iTunes, because Windows Media Player 7 was just like iTunes. You could take music from your computer and copy it to your MP3 player, which is what they used at the time. And it was really cool. It was like an early iTunes. Now, obviously, it's telling me I have no device connected. But if I did, I could simply copy this little Beck sample song and just drag it right over to my MP3 player if I had an MP3 playing device. It was really cool, and my great uncle loved this feature. He had an MP3 player at the time, and he used this, and it worked like a charm. It really did. Then Windows Media Player allowed you to choose skins. This remained up until Windows Media Player 10 when skins were removed. Or maybe it was Windows Media Player 11. It was one of the two. And you can see this is exactly why one of the reasons Windows Millennium was criticized. As you can see, it's a little slow and a little sluggish there. But that might be because I'm recording. But there were different skins you could choose from, like WinME, and all you had to do to apply a skin was double-click on it. Now, I'm not going to show that because with the sluggishness of this recorder, I'll probably end up crashing the operating system and having to redo this entire video. So I'm not going to be showing that. But you can see it gives you a little preview, and if you were to double-click it, you could just apply the skin. We'll go to Now Playing. Now, there's a sample Beck song that I'm going to play. I'm going to be quiet so you can hear the sample Beck song. I really hope I don't get content ID'd for this, but we'll give it a try. Anyways, you get the idea. But while that song was playing, I can't get it to come. Let me actually try this again. Let me try pausing it. Okay, there we go. Okay, you notice that there's this little Beck icon here. If you downloaded a song from the Microsoft music website back in the day, you'd get this little thing, and you could click it to get more information on the artist. Of course, this no longer works today. If you try clicking it now, you'll get a 404 not found error. But back in the day, it would actually take you to an artist's music page, and you could visit the Beck website if you really wanted to. Of course, I didn't listen to this kind of music back then, but of course then there was other stuff like SRS wow effects, graphics equalizers, video settings, Windows Media Information, which would actually, I think, somewhat still works today. No, maybe not. Okay. And there's our first crash of the day. Windows Media Player has performed an illegal operation. Well, anyways, you get the idea. There was ambiance and some of the modern stuff you see in Windows Media Player. That was also a common problem with Windows ME, is programs crashing and getting the infamous illegal operation and will be shut down problem. But yeah, if you ever wanted to see a program, but there you have it, folks. There's your fail for this video. Anyways, some other new features in Windows Millennium that we'll move on to. Go to All Programs. Now, there's an annoying feature about Windows Millennium. It hasn't happened to me yet, but what happens is programs, as you saw in Windows XP, what would happen is programs you used most frequently would be on the Start menu. Windows Millennium, on the Quick Launch on the Start menu. Windows Millennium kind of introduced this in a way, because if you went to your Programs menu, programs you don't use frequently would be hidden. Now, since I don't think I have enough programs on here for it to do that, but it was kind of an annoyance because you had to click Show All every single time, and it was a real pain in the ass. So Microsoft changed that in XP, thank God. But unfortunately, I don't believe there's any way to disable that in Windows Millennium. There might be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't used Windows Millennium for a while, so yeah. So as you can see, it looks like a typical list of programs here. There are also some other features in Windows Millennium that were introduced, such as, Obviously, you have all your stuff here. You've got Windows Millennium Preview. MSN made its appearance as a separate program in Windows Millennium. A system tool that was added is called System Restore. We all cherish this today, though actually most people use System Image Backup nowadays. But back in the day, System Restore was actually quite useful, because what it would do is you could create a restore point or restore your computer to an earlier time. And whenever you installed a program or made significant changes, you would be able to restore to a restore point. As you can see, I can select yesterday's date, and you can see, if let's say I installed Opera, let's just say Opera was a virus, all I have to do is click Next and Windows will restore my computer to that time period. It's like going back in time. And it actually works well. There's just one small problem. There's a date bug where after September 8th of 01, System Restore will fail to work properly. Now, Microsoft released an update patch for this. Unfortunately, the update is no longer available on Microsoft's website and has to be downloaded from a third-party site. But System Restore after that update worked well, actually, and well into XP. It was a utility that many people cherish even today, even though most people use System Image Backup nowadays. Common problems, other problems with System Restore, though, was that people complained that it restored malware and other unnecessary files, and was a great way for hackers to get into your computer in some cases. But that's System Restore. Next up, we have, oh boy, the best movie-making program in the world, Windows Movie Maker. And since this is the first time, you get this nice little intro movie screen. I can click on different tabs here and it'll tell me how to record. And if I click Show Me How, it'll actually bring up a Windows Help dialog. Let's talk about Windows Movie Maker, because Windows Millennium was the first version of Windows to include it. Windows Movie Maker, as you know, is a basic editing program designed to compete with Apple's iMovie at the time. At the time, iMovie 2 for Mac OS 9 was the current version, and Microsoft wanted a competitor, so they created Windows Movie Maker. Problem was, it sucked. And in Windows Millennium, it's unusable. The reason being is because, and I'm not going to make a movie right now, but if I were to create a slideshow, the problem is you have timeline view and storyboard view. I prefer timeline view because it's much easier to work with. But the problem was, a main problem I had is getting the audio and video to play at the same time. If I were to drag let's just say pictures down here and then I put that Beck song down here, what would happen is I would click play, and it would either just play the audio or the video. If I wanted it to play both at the same time, I'd have to right-click on the timeline and click play entire storyboard timeline, and many people couldn't figure that out. So that was one problem. Another problem was saving. Saving was an absolute catastrophe with Windows Movie Maker and Windows Millennium, because what would happen was it would either fail to save the audio and video together, or fail to save the video and get the audio only, and it took several tries to get it right. So Windows Movie Maker was a complete failure in Windows Millennium. It often crashed and caused system errors, and that's why many people ended up using different editing software. Though back in the year 2000, iMovie was about the best you could get. Though I'm pretty sure they had Sony Vegas. I'm not sure if they did, but I just don't remember what kind of editing software they had back then. But Movie Maker was definitely not one of them. You'll notice there's this record button here. Like iMovie, this allowed you to plug in a digital camcorder that supported, that had FireWire or something like that, and you could record. The problem is, it was too much too soon, because many PCs at the time did not have FireWire built in, because Apple would have sued them. Steve Jobs would have had them in a lawsuit so fast it would have made their heads spin, because they wanted people to buy Macs back then. So, Apple wasn't playing around at that time. It wasn't until 2002 or 2003 when you started seeing FireWire in computers. So this was just one of those things that was too much too soon. And unfortunately, it never really worked out either. Even if you did have a supported camcorder that was USB, unbelievably at the time, people would have thought you were from the future or something, it would often fail to connect to the camcorder, or it wouldn't import correctly, and you'd have a lot of problems. So Windows Movie Maker was a complete failure in Windows Millennium, unfortunately. It was better in XP, and Vista too, but after that people just kind of got fed up with it. Anyways, Windows Millennium also introduced some new games. It introduced the Internet Series games, and believe it or not, the games still work today. As you can see, it matches me with players, so I can click on play. It's MSN based. As you can see, it still works today. Believe it or not, it still works today. Hey, I'm chatting with a Hispanic. Look at that. I can send a message to send. I've got the chat on, and you can see messages, and you could play along with friends like this on the right from the internet. And I don't know if this opponent is actually knows that he's being recorded. So whatever your username is, White. Welcome to Ben Kleinberg's channel. You should check me out on YouTube. Just search my name. Anyways, that's enough of that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the game. And I'm sorry I had to abandon you. It's only for a demonstration. But I just wanted to show that online games still work 15 years later, just as they did in the year 2000. It's unbelievable. Anyways, so then we also have some of the classic games, and Spider Solitaire, which was introduced in the Microsoft Plus 98 package, but it's actually part of Windows Millennium. You see copyright 98 to 2000, so at the time, Spider was only 2 years old. Now, I haven't a clue how to play Spider. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're supposed to get rid of all the cards. I don't know how to play it, but that's just one of those things. So we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about some other things in Windows Millennium. The control panel is a little bit different the first time you start it up. Let me just go ahead and set it so that it looks like what it did when you start it for the first time. You'll notice it's in truncated view right now. It's only displaying the most commonly used control panel items. This was a very early category view, pre-XP category view. The thing is with this is that Windows Millennium, this is one of the more annoying things, was how it hid all the control panel items, and every time, well, at least if you made significant changes, you had to click View All Items to see everything, to get stuff to work. As for the control panel, there really is nothing much different here. It looks just like a Windows 9X control panel. It has the exact same Windows 9X feel to it, so it's very similar. I don't really think I need to show that. And then there were obviously some icon updates and stuff like that, but Windows Millennium definitely introduced a boatload of new music and media software with it. We'll go ahead and go to Wikipedia here. I'm the most reliable source in the world to just verify that I got everything right. Yep, I got WIA, USB, Windows Movie Maker. Oh, and DVD player. I completely forgot. Windows DVD player, though it's hidden in Windows Millennium, if we go to the hard disk drive, I'd have to go to my computer, but we go to the hard disk drive and you go to your system folder, you'll see a DVD player. It didn't work. It often caused BSODs and just displayed random errors and crashed often. So it was a failure, at least when I tried it. I know my great uncle bought an HP Pavilion laptop. I think it was an N series from the year 2000. Tried to play a DVD in it, and DVD player kept crashing, so he had to order a copy of InterVideo WinDVD from HP, which they sent for free since Windows built-in DVD player was a complete failure. Image preview is another feature in Windows Millennium. Actually, though, it's not new in Windows Millennium. It was actually introduced in Windows 2K. Basically, what this is talking about is if I select something like Diagonal Sand, you'll see it displays a little preview down here. That's what they're talking about. But that was in Windows 2K as well. Also, you can pause here if you want to read about some of the new networking technologies, System Restore, System File Protection, which basically, if operating system files got tampered with, Windows would warn you. SFC, but that was introduced in Windows 98. MSConfig, which was introduced in 98. ScanDisk, which runs as a program within Windows. In 98, it ran as a DOS application, but since Real Mode DOS was stripped out in Windows Millennium, it actually runs as a full-blown program in Windows Millennium. Compressed folders, there were some new accessibility options. Obviously, here's where it talks about the removal of Real Mode DOS and some other stuff that was removed in Windows ME, and it talks about some of the problems that Windows ME had. And then, of course, it relates it to other operating systems, subsequent operating systems. As for the requirements, since Windows Millennium is a full-blown 32-bit operating system, you only need an Intel Pentium with at least 150 megahertz, only 32 megabytes of RAM, a 320 megabyte hard drive, CD or DVD ROM, 3.5-inch floppy, a VGA-compatible video card, a sound card, speakers, and of course a mouse and keyboard. What they recommended was a Pentium II at 300 megahertz. I would personally recommend a Pentium II with MMX technology for the effects that Windows Millennium has. 64 megabytes of RAM. I'd recommend 96 because I tried it on 64 and it was absolutely horrible. So I would recommend 96 megabytes of RAM. 2 gigabyte hard drive, that's about right. SVGA, Super VGA, and a video capture device for Windows Movie Maker. I don't care about that though. Microphone and a 56K modem. And obviously it's not designed to handle 512 megabytes of RAM, and as you can see, this is why I had trouble installing it on the compact, because systems with 1.5 or more gigabytes of RAM may reboot constantly during startup, and that's what happened on the compact because it has 2 gigabytes of RAM. So that was the problem with that. And you can see it talks about Windows Mistake Edition and all of its bugs. Overall, though, I think Windows Millennium is that horrible of an operating system. Yes, it was very buggy when it first came out. But after Microsoft released the updates, it actually wasn't too bad. Unfortunately, it hit an early grave on July the 11th of 06, the same day as of Windows 98's end of life. The reason being was because not many people used Millennium, and Millennium was only on the shelves for a year, from its release on September 14th of 2000 until October of 01, the following year, when Windows XP came out and therefore replaced Windows Millennium. But if there's one thing we have to thank Windows Millennium for, in my mind, is if it wasn't for Windows ME sucking so bad at launch, we probably wouldn't have Windows XP. If Windows ME had good sales, there probably would not have been an XP. We probably just would have gone straight to Vista or Longhorn, or who knows what would have happened. So that is one thing we can thank Windows Millennium Edition for, is Windows XP. So, rest in peace, old friend. You were a great operating system to me, and, well, you defined my first computer and my childhood. Windows ME, happy 15th birthday.